We haven't yet looked at Turok on the channel, which is perhaps a shame because the classic dinosaur hunter comic from the 50s through to the 80s, which spawned this more modernized rebrand in the 90s, has a healthy dose of games across the whole Game Boy family that are all, at the very least, above average in their respective genres. The debut, Turok Battle of the Bionosaurs, was a Game Boy exclusive title released in 1997 to coincide with the N64 game Dinosaur Hunter. It was a pleasant surprise to come across in the chronology, as by late 1997, it was released a year to the day before this sequel, as it happens. I was A, over 90% of the way through the original Game Boy library and desperate to get that bloody book finished, and B, thoroughly fed up with terrible platformers released by THQ and Tiertex and all them, ruining countless numbers of Disney films and cartoons. It'll be a good while before we get that far in the Game Boy series on the channel, probably not going to restart the 5 DMG reviews a week thing once the book's published, now that we have all this other stuff going on. Hell, I might not even live that long, who knows. So I don't mind telling you, the first Turok title got a solid 3.5 stars from yours truly. I think what set it up for success compared to a lot of its contemporaries was that bit managers didn't just try to recreate the home console version in a downstripped or compressed manner. You can see any number of Game Boy games from the era to see why that rarely works, but instead they forged this whole new thing that really suited what the handheld was good at. Turok 2 follows the exact same principle. While the subtitle Seeds of Evil is retained from the N64 version, this is again not the same thing. Much of the earlier title has been borrowed. Character sprites have often simply been coloured in, and the control scheme feels identical. I'm okay with that, as the coat of paint adds nicely to what was already very well put together graphics. The music's definitely better and more fleshed out this time, which was a criticism of mine before. The main focus, rather than the 3D first-person shooter affair that the N64 had, is your side-scrolling 2D platformer with plenty of dinosaur shooting across 8 levels and their respective sub-levels. The controls are fluid and responsive, and after a minute or two feel great. Jumping can be quite precise, especially in some of the auto-scrolling levels, which can lead to missed jumps or even falling through platforms altogether, but it's something you just need to get a feel for, and is certainly not insurmountable. You have a similarly large arsenal of weapons to before, from your tech bow and pistol right through to a minigun and a weird particle accelerator rocket thing. Whether you'll feel the need to use all these things, I'm not sure. I largely stuck to the shotgun due to its lessened requirement for accuracy, ability to shoot in the air, which you can't do with the bow and arrow, and plentiful ammo. Although the machine gun is really good too. You'll blow through your 99 bullets pretty quickly, but it's great for bosses. Using any weapon is done with B, and often you'll be able to stand in place by holding B and a direction. This allows you to shoot directly above you, or even diagonally up and down, giving much more scope to hit enemies on different levels. Enemies are fairly sharp themselves, not just firing directly ahead, but actively aiming at you in a way that adds a much needed layer of trickiness to the combat. It's always avoidable and fair though. Ledges above you can be climbed up if you're in range and are stood in the right position. It can be a little awkward, but I've definitely experienced worse. Standing on a ledge with your back to it allows you to dangle down and hang on without falling. This can be very useful to collect stuff, look around, and even reduce fall damage. Fall further than about 3 platforms height and it's instant death. The addition of the auto-scrolling sections is a little unfortunate. While sure it does break up the routine of constant platforming levels, they don't really add much in and of themselves. You might be riding on a pterodactyl in some not very captivating or even difficult shoot-'em-up stage, or trying to navigate awkward jumps while on the back of some other dinosaur. This is perhaps the bit where the platforming is most frustrating, as in the main bulk of the game it's really quite manageable. The other auto-scrollers are the most irritating though. You might be running towards the screen, away from a rampaging beast while trying to avoid rocks and stuff that you can't see until they're really close, or going the other way, having to shoot stuff with limited ammo. If you die on any of these stages, you have to start them all over again. These really don't add anything to your experience and just have to be survived rather than enjoyed. I'd honestly have taken a slightly shorter game and not had these at all, were it up to me. Enough about those bits anyway, because the main game is actually really fun. It's not a straightforward get to the end task. You'll often have to traipse all around these stages looking for buttons that activate portals or unlock doors. Nothing overly complex of course, but it's a refreshing take on the platforming idea. Don't worry about going in and out of other rooms or sections with regards to your limited ammo. Once an enemy's killed on a stage, it doesn't come back even if you go into into another area. With plenty of pickups all over the place, you shouldn't run out of ammo, and like I say, there are loads of guns to choose from anyway. Even if you do, somehow, you'll always have your dagger to get in close quarters. Well, I say you'll always have it, but that's actually not the case. Right at the start of the game, you're in some city, completely unarmed, surrounded by these weird, perambulating NPCs just trotting back and forth. Some attack you and others don't, and at first it seems kind of random which ones will go for you. Keep going through this stage, avoiding them, until you find something called a light burden. Now, you can press and hold select when you see one of the people, and the protagonist, Joshua Fireseed, will be able to scan them. It turns out the ones that attack you are actually these dinosaurs in disguise. Once you've found your trusty knife and clear the city of them all, the portal will open up and you'll be taken onwards. This was a pretty cool opening level mechanic that was sadly never revisited after stage 1. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the platforming elements of the game. It even feels like a run-and-gunner light in places. You get your auto-firing machine gun going, and you can blast through lots of enemies at once. Were there more emphasis on adding a few more interesting level layouts instead of those daft little auto-scroller filler segments, Turok 2 would have scored very highly indeed. There were a not insignificant number of mixed to negative reviews of Turok 2 in the gaming media back in the day, and hey, that's totally fine. If there are problems with the game itself, you're within your rights to call them out. Hell, I do it all the time. But going back and reading these reviews from back in the day, they all have basically the same complaint. Well, it's not as good as the N64 version. Look, do yourself a favor, and this applies to any Game Boy port, and if you've watched this channel before, it's really something you should know by now. Don't compare these to their home console counterparts, as of course they're not as graphically accomplished, of course they're not as diverse gameplay-wise. Look, it's not such a problem nowadays because all of it comes under the retro umbrella anyway, and so you kind of feel is respected differently now, I guess. I don't know why though, people back then, vaunted industry professionals no less, didn't get this. Like, I don't know what you were expecting, but people's biggest criticism of a Game Boy Color game is that it doesn't have stereo quality audio and smooth first-person 3D controls. The Game Boy's not for that, and it never was.